No, seriously, just grateful for the opportunity. So grateful for Charlie and Josh here today. And you know how it is. A lot of educators out there just pouring into people, trying to make our profession the great profession it is. And we're just grateful that you continue to carry the banner, not only for our profession, but obviously it means the world to me that you carry the banner for Connected Publishing as well. So thank you guys both so much. You guys are amazing. I appreciate it. So.
Well, you're amazing too. And you served 22 years as a school leader, state and national award-winning principal, best-selling author. I'm guessing folks that are in here have heard the book Culturize, as it's sold so many copies all over this world. Keynote speaker, leadership coach, author of so many books, and owner, of course, of Connected Publishing. So with that, Charlie, do you want to kick off the questioning?
Oh my gosh, yes. All right, Jimmy, we want to know in your book, because this is such a big piece of it. We've heard you talk. So you talk about eradicating the average in schools. That's a big theme for you. So how does a culture of excellence directly influence the way we respond to student behavior specifically?
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's a great question. And for those of you who are following along, if you want to throw a question in the chat or a comment or something, I'll see it and I can try to respond to that as well, because I want to make sure you get your questions or thoughts responded to or answered or those types of things. So yes, the whole topic of average, right? I mean, I do believe that the world is full of average, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can become a little dangerous because, again, I feel like we're just settling then, right? That we just settle for the status quo. And we have to recognize that everywhere we go in our experiences in life, whether we walk into a restaurant, right? Especially when it comes to customer service, try to call Verizon or something. Just the service that we get sometimes can mess with us a little bit, and recognize that the average is what's messing with us a little bit. But it's also important to understand that every organization has average. So I'm trying to help people, don't run away from it. Don't run away from your average. But what we see is the healthiest cultures, what they do is they create a process, right? So in other words, their environment, they have a process in their environment, which is their school, their classroom, their campus. If they're a coach, maybe it's out on the field, or whatever that location is they have an ability to bring people together to say, hey, listen, we recognize there's average in the organization, but what we're trying to understand is, where is the average in the organization? What's causing the average in the organization? Why does it exist? Has it been here for years? Is this something newly established? So the point of this is that we want to create an environment where people actually can talk about the average without fear of repercussion and without fear of retaliation. And here's what I try to explain to people all the time. The truth is this: people are talking about the average anywhere. And anyway, so they're talking about it. The problem is they're not talking about it in the room. They leave the room and they talk about it somewhere else, in another classroom, in the hallway, in the parking lot, at home, maybe online, whatever, but they're talking about it somewhere. So what if we could create an environment that we could actually talk about the average right here in our organization, whether it's in our auditorium, our cafeteria, our classroom, a commons area. And the best part about that is it begins to help people understand that we all have a voice. And more importantly, what I've learned is that every individual in the organization can identify where some level of average exists. Okay. So why don't we just create an environment that allows people to talk about that? And more importantly, the question ultimately is this: so what are we going to do about it? Are we just going to accept average as our standard? And that's what we're trying to get away from. The best organizations can identify their average, they can talk about average, and more importantly, they do something about it. They do not allow average to become the standard. And when we talk about a lot of average in our organization, one of the areas that we notice this in is in the area of behaviors. I believe is that culture is defined by the behaviors of the people in the organization. And for those of you who know my work, I often say that the behaviors of the adults in the organization match or mirror the words on the wall. And if not, then we're causing that culture. And the truth of the matter is, I believe we cause the culture. I think we're the undercurrent. And the undercurrent is anything in the organization that hurts our morale or hurts our culture. That's the average, and in some cases even below average, right? So what are we going to do about that? And so the key is you have to start by creating opportunities for people to have a voice and to recognize that we have to take time to listen to where people are and what's creating some of those undercurrents that cause the average. Now, the last thing I'll say about this is this: you have to understand is that some people aren't ready to talk about it. They won't talk about it. They'll hesitate. They'll stay quiet, and that's okay. But here's the difference. At least you now know who is processing and who hesitates to share the average. That tells us something about our culture. And that's why I hate anonymous surveys. I think anonymous surveys are unhealthy. I think they are tools, they are gotcha tools. They're not teaching tools. They're not meant to help you and support you. They're meant to hurt people, and that's what they do. So what are we going to do about that? How do we create a culture where people can actually talk about these things? How can we get away from the anonymous survey? And how can we get away from the culture of gotcha and create a culture of, hey, I got you, right? How do we create that culture? And so, this is what I work on. In fact, I'm in a district right now in Indiana. They do exit interviews. I said, well, isn't that sad that we had to wait 28 years to finally ask somebody their opinions about our district, right? And it's not meant as a criticism or a judgment. It's they have to see that these processes are ineffective and we're causing that. Why don't we do stay interviews? Why don't we do interviews twice or 3 times a year and get people to want to stay, listen to their voice, hear what they have to say. They will see things that we don't see. And how do we create that through the entire system? So those are some things that, I would say some general themes and some bigger picture items to be thinking about. And of course, we can break it down all the way from the boardroom all the way to the classroom if you want. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, it starts with behavior.
Yeah, that's so true. All right, I've heard you speak. You've got a wonderful podcast. Obviously, we talked about your books, and in all of those things, you emphasize traits like kindness, honesty, and compassion, which are essential. So, how can our schools intentionally culturize or cultivate these essential skills in our students?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to model it first as adults, right? I mean, I think sometimes we expect kids to do things that we're not even doing ourselves. So, definitely one thing that we always want to start with is when it comes to behaviors in organizations, again, these are opinions that I have. Not everybody agrees with them, but I feel I'm very passionate about them. But at least I'll explain it. Not everybody will agree with my explanation, but I don't just, I don't blow up systems, people. I think our system actually is pretty good, but I do like to get people to reflect on how can we make it even better. I think we're in the teaching profession. We have to continue to teach. We have to continue to learn. That's what our job is. That's what we expect kids to do. Then we have to do the same thing. So one of the ways we begin to do that is to recognize that right now there are a lot of programs that are in schools everywhere I go that I believe are focusing on the wrong problem. We're trying to convince people that if we just fix student behaviors, that will take care of all of our problems. Well, the truth of the matter is, in my opinion, is I don't think it's the students we have to focus on. I think the question is, where's the framework for adult behavior? I think if we want to change student behavior, we have to start by changing the adult behavior. Again, not everybody agrees with me on that, but I do think that we contribute a lot to that. I think sometimes we cause that, and we have to reflect and ask ourselves, what role are we playing in that impact on what's happening in terms of culture? So one of the simplest ways we can begin to understand that is, well, what are the expectations when it comes to how adults are going to behave in an organization? And that work revolves to me around core values. Who are we? And more importantly, who do we want to be? Once again, take a look at the words on the wall. Kindness matters, respect, responsibility, equity. I mean, I can go on and share all the words I see everywhere I go, but the question is, then why do I see adults who currently aren't living those values? If we're going to ask kids to do this, we're going to ask kids to get along. You know how many organizations I work in right now that the number one problem is that adults don't get along? If you look at all the assessments that I do on the data that I collect on assessments, teachers are not complaining about children. They're complaining about their peers. They're complaining about their colleagues. They're complaining about administration. Why? In other words, adult behaviors. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So it does start with, if we're going to impact student behavior, we have to model that first, right? We have to model the same expectations that we want students to emulate. But I think it has to start with that, because why are we focusing on their behavior when we have to focus on our behavior? Now, obviously, there are behaviors in classrooms where kids are, they're not behaving the way we want to, and they're not meeting our expectations. They're not where we want them to be academically. We have children that are traumatized. We have children that are hungry. We have children that haven't slept. We have children that are working third shift. I can go on and on to all these issues. The hard part for us is because at least in my experience, the adults that I encounter, they love children and they want to make a difference. They want to help. It breaks their heart when these kids aren't reaching their potential. And I get that. But the problem with that is sometimes we then become the fixer. We're trying to fix all these problems. And in doing so, sometimes the adults get frustrated because they care so much. And now their behavior begins to impact the students' behavior because it comes from a really good place. But that's why we have to be really clear. What is the framework from which the adults are going to operate from? Because we can't fix all these problems. But what we can do is bring a better version of ourselves to every interaction, to every conversation. And I promise you this, you will get a better result. You may not fix the problem, but you can. I just want you to work on you. I work on me, you work on you. If all the adults work on us, we'll start getting some better results. Whether it's in the area of engagement, in the area of relationships, in the area of compassion or empathy, whatever it is, we have to model that first and be able to display that to our peers and our colleagues and our kids. Or how can we expect kids to do these things when we're not even doing these things? So those are some things that I think about again in general when I start looking at this. Because again, I think part of the issue we do, and this is what I explained today where I'm at, is oftentimes I'll go into a place and they just want a tool. Give me the tool, give me the answer, tell me how to do it. But what they don't understand is if you don't understand where this is coming from, like you have to have a certain mindset. Because here's what I can predict. I can give you a tool. The question is, what are you going to do when the tool doesn't work? Here's what's going to happen. We blame the child. No, this is why you can't just give people tools. I'd rather have you, let's be clear, what are we actually trying to accomplish? What's the end result of this? Okay, well, if we were going to make that happen, what would that look like? What would the adults need to do to make that happen, right? And in doing so, what we begin to understand is now we're very clear about what we need to do. And by the way, are we all doing this? Are we consistent? Are we aligned? Do we even define what that means? And this is what I keep running into is this lack of clarity what these things actually mean. Like today, they want to talk about engagement. Great, I said, define it for me. Well, we have 40 people in the room and everybody has a different opinion what engagement is. Well, we're not even aligned, so we're walking into classrooms. No wonder teachers are confused. That's not fair to a teacher. And then we want to judge them and evaluate them and assess them. And, you know, this is, again, I'm not being critical. This is just what I observe, but this is why I don't judge it. I think people do the best they can. So what are we going to do to support them and help them? Well, let's get back to teaching again. That's what we should be doing. Teachers should be teaching children and adults should be teaching teachers. We all should be teaching one another because that is a great, healthy culture. To believe that everybody wants to be great, so let's help them be great. And that's just how I see it.
Wow. Well, you bring up so many points in there that's what schools are really struggling with. They're struggling with being disenfranchised. There's a lot of blame shifting going on. And so what I'm wondering is this is what if you have a teacher and that teacher is just so disheartened with that disengaged kid, that kid who's just struggling. So they're struggling and they're just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. How would you approach the re-engagement of that kid? So it has to go beyond the tools, of course. That's why I like the coaching and development is so important. How would you approach this?
Yeah, so if I'm personally a teacher and I have a student in my classroom who's struggling, let's take that. Okay. The first thing I would say is if you're a teacher and you have that kid in the classroom, the first thing I'd ask you to do is reframe it and see it differently. The first thing I'd ask you is how many kids you have in the classroom? 24? Great. How many kids are struggling so bad that they're so disengaged that they're not doing what you want them to do? And you know what I learned when I ask that question? Usually it's a handful. And you know what I say to teachers? Great. Sounds like you're doing a pretty good job then, right? So 20 of this 24 students are actually doing what you want them to do. But why do we define everything around these 4 kids? Once again, is because teachers care. They want to make a difference. They want to help. Sometimes teachers get frustrated because it does become a little bit of a power struggle. You're not going to sit in my class and do nothing. Well, the first thing we have to understand is this. There is a reason why children behave the way they behave, okay? And you know what I've learned? Is because it's based on their previous experiences long before they ever got to you. So we know that one of the best practices is to invest time in young people to understand where that behavior comes from. Now, we have to be realistic. Some kids are not going to tell you. You know why? Because they don't trust you. In fact, they don't trust many adults. Because we have to see that a lot of these people, especially as they get older and go through the system, that by the time they're in middle school or high school, these kids have been told a bazillion times by the adults in their lives, we care about you, we love you, we're not going to let you fail, we care about you, you can be whatever you want. But you know what we forget to tell them? You got to comply. Oh, so it's conditional. So if I don't behave, I'll get kicked out of the classroom. If I don't behave, you'll get frustrated with me and raise your voice. You'll tell me to get out. You'll tell me, what are you doing here? Why are you wasting my time? You'll say all these really harsh things to me, but even though you said you love me, well, that doesn't sound like you love me. And now it begins to mess with kids. Well, imagine a young, by the way, we're talking about a child who has not even developed that frontal lobe yet, who doesn't even understand what the hell is happening, but they're trusting the adults know best. And yet look at our behavior and the impact over time that it has on young people. And so we have to see this. And so one of the things I say to people, again, it's to reframe it. And first of all, what if we sat down with children and we changed our behavior? And this is, I go back to core values. What is your hope for your classroom by the end of the year? Have you articulated that to them? Have you shared that with them? Why not say to a group of young people, I don't care if they're in second grade, seventh grade, or juniors in high school, what if the adult said, you know what, I can't change and fix all this behavior. In fact, it's not even my job. My job is to bring the best version of me to these young people, so hopefully I get a better result, okay? All right, so in order to do that, I should probably be clear what my hope is for this classroom. So why wouldn't I just say to my kids, hey kids, listen, I want to share with you something, okay? You know what my hope is? I hope that by the end of the school year, when you look back, you will actually say, oh my God, I love fourth grade. Oh my goodness, I love seventh grade. Loved 11th grade American history or whatever your class is, right? Whatever the class is. What if we said that to teachers or students? And what if we also said, and you know what else my hope is that when you look back, you say, you know what? I know my teacher cared about me and I know my teacher loved me. My hope is at the end of the year, when you look back, you can say those things with sincerity and genuineness, and you'll actually mean it because that was your experience. That's what my hope is. Now, can I be honest with you, students? There are going to be some days that I come in here and you're going to think I'm the ugliest person ever, that I'm the meanest person ever, that I'm not very flexible, that I'm not very this and I'm not very that. I know that can happen to me. People were together 180 days, okay? But here's what I'm going to ask you. If that were to happen, the question is, would you help me see what I don't see? Okay? By the way, if you look up on the wall over here, I've written four values of mine that are really important to me. Number one, this year, one of my hopes is that you experience kindness for me every day throughout the year. You'll also see that I put the word relationships in there because that's really important to me. That means I want to get to know you on a more personal level. I want to get to understand you. I want you to get to know me. And more importantly, I want to get you guys to know each other. That is something I'm going to really work on this year, and you're going to see that throughout the year. In addition to that, also notice that I'm working on my patience. I know that sometimes I can be pretty impatient. I move a little quick. Sometimes I get a little frustrated. I know that, okay? And finally, if you take a look at that, one of the things you need to know about me is that integrity means the world to me. That means I expect people to be honest. That means I'll treat you with integrity. I'll treat, and you'll explain this. And you say to the kids, if I violate any of these values, will you do me a favor? Would you be willing to say, Mr. Casas, remember at the beginning of the year when you told us that this is who you're going to try to be? Right now, I'm a little frustrated with you because I don't think, will you say that to me or will you hesitate that say to me? So if you don't feel comfortable saying that to me, will you at least do me this favor? Will you just stare at the wall for a few seconds and I'll notice you're staring at the wall? That'll probably be a little hint to me, Jimmy, you're doing something right now that you're violating your values. My point is this, if you want to be great for others, the first thing you got to do is you got to be clear to others what you hope to be. And more importantly, you got to give people permission to help you be great. Never met anybody who was able to be great on their own. So again, I do believe it starts with the clarity of expectations. Who do I want to be? What do I need from you? And more importantly, how are we actually going to get there? And the best way to get there is we help each other get there. The greatest cultures are those cultures where everybody in the organization wants everybody else to be great. And more importantly, we give them permission to help us. There isn't a single person on the Zoom session tonight that's here that got here all by themselves. I know that for a fact, people. Every one of us are here because people helped us get here. So why do we stop allowing people to help us? You want to be great? Give people permission to help you be great. You want to be a better mom? Tell your kids that you want to be a great mom for them and tell them to help you. You want to be a great husband? Tell your wife you want to be a great husband to her and tell her what you're going to need for you to be a better husband. Then start working on you. That's what I would say. Yeah, I'm getting all fired up now. Can you see it? Becky?
Well,
Yeah,
it's good,
now.
Jimmy.
And I've been speaking for 8 hours today, people. I'm all done. I've been doing workshops all day. I'm still fired up. Can't help myself.
That's awesome.
These people out in the hallway are looking at me like, what's going on in that room?
Yeah, what's that guy doing in there?
I'll be
Crazy
fine,
guy.
Lauren. Don't worry. I got you. I'm in a complete stranger's office right now. So, man.
Well, Jimmy, I know there's a lot of folks with a lot of different roles in education that are joining us today and will also be joining us in the replays. I know someone in the comments just asked about replays and wants to show this to their staff. So that's awesome. So for those folks that want to begin that culturizing process, maybe it's the teacher, maybe it's an administrator, what is something that they can do as a first step to kind of get them to what you're talking about?
Yeah, remember, I always start with this. There's this little framework in my head that really starts with this. And this is really around clarity. It's what is it you want? Mm-hmm. More importantly, why is that so important to you, right? And third, why don't you bring a group of people together or whatever that group is and say, hey, if we're going to do this, I need your help to do that. What would that actually look like? I think one of the things is, as educators, we take a lot of pride, we feel a lot of guilt, a lot of responsibility, we want to be great for others. I think we take way too much on, number one. I think we're trying to do too much. Number two, the pace in the job is unbelievable, people. You cannot maintain this pace that we're trying to do 100 miles an hour, everybody. So I always say, if you want to be better for others, then slow down. I think that's part of the issue. We have to slow down. But it does begin with a mindset. And Culturize really was this idea of a mindset. First of all, to be clear, it is a behavior framework. That's all it is. It's a behavior framework for adults, but if I'm being completely honest, it was a behavior framework for me. I wrote those core principles in 2005. I wrote them for me because I had lost my way and I realized, my goodness, what the heck has happened to me? I'm no longer the same person I was when I first went into the profession. I am literally a shell of myself. And then what we learn is because this job can mess with you, my friends. It messes with you. You have these experiences, it starts messing with you, and the next thing you know, your behavior changes. And we have to get back to recognize that we're causing some of this. So it is a behavior framework. And so again, frameworks are really critical in the work we do. And that's why I say, who do we want to be? More importantly, what are we going to do to get there to achieve that? But you can't do it by yourself. But it does start with clarity, and it also starts with being a little strategic. And what I mean by strategic means that we're not being manipulative to people. We don't play games with people. You don't build high-performing cultures by playing games with people. Being strategic means you have to have some sort of plan, but you can't build it by yourself. Who are you going to build it with? And so when you begin to see it that way, then hopefully we begin to respond differently and we'll get some better results. But we also have to be very transparent, right? People, unfortunately, sometimes believe that we do have agendas of what we're trying to accomplish, and we get better results if we just say to people, hey, listen, I want to be very upfront with you. This is my hope. This is what I want to accomplish. Here's why I want to accomplish it, and I'm hoping that you'll support me in getting there, whether that's a teacher to kids or an adult supervisor to a colleague or as people they supervise. So again, Culturize is a behavior framework. I believe in behavior frameworks. I believe in processes. I think sometimes our processes are ineffective. It's our process that's causing the issue. It's not the math curriculum, people. It's not the literacy curriculum. It's not the new initiative that we implemented. It's not the reason it failed. The reason it failed is because our process was ineffective. We didn't slow down enough. We went too quickly. We tried to scale it way too quickly. We haven't gone back and revisited it for 3 years. We did a rollout 3 years ago, and we haven't trained any on board of the new people that have come on board. There's nothing to measure it. We're not holding people in a way, giving them the ongoing support that they need. I can go on and on and on, but processes are really important in the work that we do. And the most important part of the process is you got to give people a voice, and you'll get better results if you create things together. Okay? You just get in that habit of doing some of these things. And some of these are very habitual, and so we have to get into really good practices because I believe that we can get kind of sloppy sometimes. Not intentionally. It's usually because we're moving too quickly, or because we haven't been clear, or because we're trying to do too many things by ourselves. So these are just general leadership effective practices that we know will get better results. And I wish we could just sit here and start breaking them down one at a time. Well, what does that look like? What does that look like? What does that look like? But the problem with that is that's the fix-it in us. That's the fixer in us. We're trying to fix these problems. What I'm saying to you is, instead of you trying to figure out how to improve attendance, instead of you trying to figure out how to improve the culture, instead of you trying to improve how to reduce referrals or get more kids to graduate, whatever it is we're trying to improve in our organization, why don't you just bring a group of people together and say, hey, you know what would be nice? Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's why. If we were to accomplish that, what would that look like? What role would you play in? What role should we play in it? In other words, how do we get some clarity what everyone's responsibility is in doing these things so we get some better results? But unfortunately, right now, we have too many people working in silos, working in isolation, and we aren't building those high-performing teams. And we know that in order to move an organization forward, in other words, the system, is you got to get people moving together in the same direction. But you got to recognize there are going to be some people that aren't ready to go in that direction. But the question is, why not? Okay? So again, these are all around behaviors, but always remember this, that I believe, and I mean this sincerely, I've never met a teacher who didn't want to be great. I've never met a principal who didn't want to be great. Never met a superintendent who wanted to be great. People, and I do this work every day. But I've met a lot of superintendents, a lot of principals, a lot of teachers that have lost their way. How do we help these people find their way back? If we're going to ask teachers to walk into a classroom and help kids find their way back, then we have to help teachers find their way back. Take care of the teachers so we can take care of the children. But teachers, we also got to take care of administrators. There's a through line from the boardroom to the classroom, and I believe we all have to own it. And when we don't, then I think we're causing that. So,
wow, that's so. Well, you can tell there's people in the chat too who are saying that they've used Culturize this year. They're all going back, right? Like whatever it takes. They know the theme, they know the motto, they get it. So thank you guys very much for recognizing that and this work, Jimmy, that you're doing. So there's a free resource you have, and it's the Interview Chair Resource Guide. Can you tell people about what to expect when they get that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of free resources. Definitely the interview chair itself is a resource. I mean, there's over 100 episodes now that you can download. There are study guides. You don't have to spend a ton of money, right? There's all these different things. But I think the one thing right now that's happening is that Charlie and Josh have provided a free resource for you, right? I mean, you can go back and listen to all these people. I don't care if it's Shane Said, if it's Todd Neslony, if it's Allison Apsey, right? Lainey Rao, all these people, Danny Steele. I mean, all these people, Darren Pepper, that are going to come on tonight. Those are free resources. And the most important resource is the network. The fact that you guys, Charlie and Josh and the team is doing this is an opportunity to bring people together. Hell, I had to listen to all this text messaging going on. It's like, who are half these people, right? It's an opportunity to network with more people just connecting people with other people, to remind ourselves that that's the best part of the job, right? It's the connections with people to support one another in the work we do. I think it's the most important profession. It is truly a work of ministry, but it's also can be very isolating. But it's 2025 people. So if you're isolated, the question is, what are you going to do about that? There is so many opportunities out there and so many resources. But I'll give you the best resource ever, in my opinion, which is the free resources. Listen, if you're lost and you're struggling, get into that social media account if you have to, or look me up on the website, shoot me a DM, and I promise I'll call you. Okay? If you need some help, you're never alone, people. Always remember, we got you, and we will do whatever we can to support you. But at the end of the day, we got to work on ourselves. So yes, free resources on those is back to school. You'll see some options, some things to consider, some things to try. These are things that are practical, very easy, very simple, but are reminders, because sometimes even the things that we know how to do, why do we stop doing them? I don't know, because life happens, and we need to get back to the basic fundamentals. And I think Culturize is very fundamental and very basic. Focus on the things that are the most important, and that is, how do we stay in the conversation longer? How do we pour into people? And are we taking time to understand, why do people behave the way they behave? Because they have a reason. So let's help them work their way out of that, because I'm clear what my why is now, people. And that is, my hope is that I can inspire people to be more and do more than they ever thought possible. I want to help people find their way back to be the person that they always want to be. That is my mission in life. Everything I do now is to do that. So I offer that to you. If you're feeling a little lost, reach out to me. I promise I'll be there for you, okay? Can't say I can fix it, but I'll at least listen, and we'll try to work on you and see if we can figure out what's going on, okay? All right. Awesome. Josh, Charlie, you guys are both amazing. You guys, God bless you for the work you continue to do. Thank you for doing this tonight, and thank you for pouring into people. And you guys are amazing, and I love you both. And that, by the way, Todd and Dr. Cam and Shane and Charlie and Josh, I've loved them just a little bit more tonight, because these fools all believed in me to let me publish their book. That's crazy.
Look what you get when you publish from Connect Ed and other
language
really
of behavior, baby. School mental health, baby. That's what I'm talking. That's right.